Alright, getting this to a day early since I'll be busy tomorrow, even though I usually do these on Sundays. So what I'll be talking about today is kind of combining some of the other videos that I've made and everything, especially stuff hobbies and support groups and everything. So a lot of times if you don't necessarily have with smart recovery meetings in your area, what you can do is in a sense kind of create your own support group and everything using something like the hobbies and everything. So also with support groups, what you can do is with getting into taking care of your physical health, you can have a community of people at the gym, your gym buddies and everything. So there's also that, but that's only pretty much a small portion of the amount of time of your day and everything, because most of the time, especially with me, you don't necessarily need to be able to go to you don't have to go to the gym for 2 or 3 hours at a time to actually get stuff done. So most of the time, my workouts are usually 45 minutes to an hour long, and that's more than enough time to get the stuff done and be able to get in and out and get on with your day and everything. So with your gym community, yeah, it's important, so that way you can take care of your physical health, and it'll have an indirect benefit to your mental health as well. So because the two, while separate, are connected and everything, because the better you feel physically, it can have the effect of better mentally that you feel as well. Plus with the support group aspect, you're pretty much seeing the same, most likely being seeing the same people over and over again. So when I was going to the local YMCA, I was working second shift, so I got to get in I'd usually be in 9:30 in the morning. So it was pretty much the same people, a lot of other people that were like me, that were working second shift, or you had a lot of people the retirees that are pretty much in their late 60s, early 70s type of deal. So they pretty much had all day, so they would come in to kind of do their thing. So you're seeing seeing the same in my instance, you're seeing the kind of the same people, and you can kind of shoot the shit and everything, and get to know each other. So there's that aspect of a support group, and you can create it as a hobby and everything, because to the point where it's just something you do and everything. So with the hobby aspect, you sit there and you can watch YouTube videos, read books, listen to the podcasts and stuff. And another thing with hobbies is, especially with maybe not necessarily if you're working with a therapist or a counselor or a psychologist or whatever, and you're early on, you can't find a support group for smart recovery, or the Phoenix program that I mentioned. You can find other things, there's some of the big games you can get into, role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons is probably the biggest one and everything. So what you can do is you can sit there and go to your local game, one of your local gaming stores, and start ask around, hey, look, I'm interested in getting into Dungeons and Dragons. You guys have a Facebook page or stuff in groups that come here to play a weekly meeting, weekly session or whatever. And it could also be with that the same thing with the gaming store. They're also big into board games and card games. Magic the Gathering is probably still the biggest card game out there, and it's been around for decades, even though there are other card games out there. I have Overpower card game, which is a card game based on the Marvel comics and everything. This was created back in the mid 90s, so this is well before the movies started coming out. So you could also use the gaming stores to get together with people who are into card games. Another big thing is miniature games. Big two that come to mind for me are Warhammer 40,000 and BattleTech. 40,000 Warhammer is kind of your sci-fi mixed with magic and psionics and stuff like that. It takes elements from other stuff, and you're basically playing like one of the factions, and like I say, you can have a bunch of miniatures, and it's a board game. Of course, they do got computer games and stuff like that, and like with BattleTech, it's another sci-fi. It's a board game with the little miniatures that are probably about that big or whatever. Which you have these giant war robots that you're piloting, and they also have like a role playing game for that and everything. So with support groups, it could be like intertwined, like I said, with hobbies. So you don't necessarily need to get into a recovery focused type of support group outside of maybe doing outpatient or whatever. So the whole premise with smart recovery is basically to get yourself to the point where you can actually move on with your life. So you don't necessarily want to have this is in my opinion, building off that is you don't necessarily want to have a addiction support group in the sense that you're just basically replacing it your addiction with that addiction or support group, using the Friday night and the happy hour analogy. It's Friday night, you go to happy hour, oh man, I really needed this drink or whatever. Same kind of analogy with meetings, especially AA. It's oh, it's Friday, we had a long week at work, oh, I really needed this meeting and everything. So you could run into the problem of trading, in a sense, one addiction for another. You're drug, alcohol, or whatever substance you abuse, trading that addiction for the addiction of going to meetings and everything. So this is the one of the things is what's great about the other options other than AA is especially smart recovery is you're building up based on the 4 points. So building, maintaining motivation. You can get to the point where you can control your urges without any second thought. You get your thoughts, behaviors, emotions in check and everything, and you're leading to a balanced life. So that way you're not focusing all your time on oh, I gotta go to meetings for forever. You can go outside and start actually living your life outside of those recovery meetings, which well, they'll definitely be handy in the first in early recovery. So a lot of some of the stuff I've come across online is usually the important dates are usually 3 months, 6 months, a year, and then by a year you pretty much got yourself on a level ground, and now it's going from there. It's just a matter of building on that as well. So usually after a year, maybe 2 or whatever, you can when you get to the point where you actually feel confident enough in your ability to stay sober, stay clean, or stay away from whatever addictive behavior or whatever it is that you're having to deal with. You can move you can get yourself on solid ground to move on to the hobbies and make your support groups out of those and everything. So for instance, instead of the happy hour analogy I just used, and instead of switching a happy hour for a AA meeting or a smart recovery meeting or whatever, you get to the point where Friday night you're texting your friends and everything. You get together for your pretty much your weekly Dungeons and Dragons session, or you get together and you're into Warhammer. You go to one of your local game shops. You pick up a couple miniatures, and you bring the stuff you already have, and you start playing for a few hours, and that could be a substitute for meetings or your addictive behavior, going to happy hour type of analogy. So this is just another way that you can build on other videos I mean with the support groups, hobbies, and getting into other aspects of life and everything. So it's just it could lead you down a whole different road where you may not necessarily get into board games or card games or tabletop role-playing games Dungeons and Dragons. it could lead you to maybe you're more of like the introvert type, and like you like to do like online role playing games. Of course, the first online role playing game to ever come out that I know of was EverQuest, and I don't know if it's still around because I haven't gotten into it in years. I mean, there is World of Warcraft that's still big, and the one that my brother and I play is Final Fantasy 14. So there are like online role playing games that you can get to if like you if you're more of like an introvert type, or maybe like you have like a social anxiety, and like you're still working on issues. So like actually going to a gaming store to do like those board games, role playing games, may not necessarily be that at the point where like you feel comfortable enough to go there. What you can do is to substitute the online role playing games for that instead, and like you meet a bunch of people on on those games, and you can maybe do that as like a weekly thing or whatever. So like again, Friday night, like when you get done work, and instead of going out to the happy hour or like a recovery meeting, or like what you could do is like the board, like I said, with the board games, the card games or whatever, going to like a local game store. You could go home and sit down and be able to play like one of those online role-playing games that like I mentioned, that would also give you something to look forward to. Like, oh hey, I just like busted my ass at work all week. Now it's time for me to sit back and relax. Like I can punch up the computer and turn on like Final Fantasy 14 or World of Warcraft, get with a bunch of friends, and like we know we are always on like a certain time or whatever, so we can always meet up and like go like raid dungeons in the game, or do like go on like a specific quests, or do like maybe work on like the main storyline or something. So like these are just like ideas of people of way people can use the different analogies of like support groups, and like using your hobbies. So like sometimes like you can use hobbies to create your support groups, or you can use like your support groups to give you ideas to get you into hobbies type of deal. So this is just like another idea that you can use to be able to like build yourself up and get away from your addictive behavior, or like a substance, or whatever it was that you were suffering from.